Hello and welcome to the Full On Football podcast. I am joined tonight by my co-host Harry. How you doing, mate? You good?
Yeah, good mate. All good.
And we are joined tonight by a special guest. We're joined by George Scaife from TikTok. 125k followers, is it, George?
And the
Or tell us.
rest, no, I'm not joking. Not that I count. Something like that. I don't know. I don't know.
He does. He's lying. He knows exactly how many. He's had three in the last 10 minutes. Yeah, good stuff. Cheers for joining us, mate. He's here tonight to dissect Liverpool's season so far.
Yep.
George, how you feeling about Liverpool's start to the season?
It's pretty dull. We're all in the same boat, aren't we? We just can't seem to string results together. One week we beat City, next week we lose to Forest. I mean, we just can't seem to make our mind up when we perform well. It's like I used the phrase in my video, it's like we choose when we want to win. We choose when we want to perform well, and that's not good enough. There is no consistency. If I was a betting man, I'd never bet Liverpool. Never, ever.
What do you think is the main reason behind Liverpool's struggles this season? Is there a because for me, there's not like one standout thing. I hear
Yeah.
people say that, oh yeah, Mane's left. That's the reason. There's too many variables to pin it on one thing for me. I think there's 7 or 8 different things you could point at. But what is it for you?
That's it. It's spread across a few things. We'll probably talk about it in more detail later. One's the players. Some of them, frankly, aren't good enough. Two is Klopp. I think it's a very taboo subject. People do protect Klopp, and we'll probably get onto it later again. But the finger's got to be pointed at some of the things he does. Listen, he's transformed Liverpool. Liverpool wouldn't be where they are now without him. Wouldn't have the players we have now without him. But how far can he take this team? It's got to be said, and no one's speaking about it because it's very easy to say FSG don't back him. It's very easy to say we've got so many injuries and easy to point the finger at the players for not performing. But that man on the sideline there has to take some of the slack, unfortunately. And then number three is the FSG in the backing, in my opinion.
Just on that, George, the FSG thing. Last season, start of last season, we did a show, and I predicted like that Liverpool were on the verge of a rebuild, and they obviously went at almost the most ridiculous season in the history of English football. It didn't quite work out, and I always felt that Klopp was masking what should be quite an under fire FSG. Like I don't see the model of FSG too dissimilar to Man United, other than the fact that they're a bit more shrewd in their business. Do you think if Klopp were to leave, then all of a sudden FSG will be bang under fire? If Darwin Núñez doesn't work out, they'll be bang under fire. Because to me, they've been very lucky that Klopp gets virtually every ounce of value out of every single player and hasn't really got to sign him wrong, other than maybe Keita for like the last 5 years.
I completely agree. It's a testament to Klopp, really. If you look at the average, sorry, there's a train going past me. Else, you might hear a loud sound there. If you look at the average net spend, it's around 30-40 million, which is just crazy. And you think, where's that come from? But you've got to look at Coutinho and Suarez, and obviously Mane has just gone as well. And Klopp is doing well with what he's been given, which isn't much. If you look at Man United, like you said, I understand the structure there, but I just think they're going for wild players. And the difference is they haven't got the manager who's going to transform them players into what Klopp has transformed our players to. Look at Robertson. How's that happened? From Hull, he was a nobody. He was relegated. He was a nobody at Hull. He was a backup left back at one point, and Klopp's made him into the world beater he is now. Van Dijk, an established player at Southampton, but no one could ever foresee what he was going to go and achieve. Mane, Salah failed in the Premier League ultimately, and Klopp's turned him into this monumental player. So I think it is definitely down to Klopp, and the difference between Liverpool and Man United in terms of the structure is that manager. Man United haven't had a proper set-in-stone manager for years until this Ten Hag's come in. I think that's the main difference there.
I'm massively intrigued. You've started, so obviously the question about why you've struggled. One of the first points you've looked at is Klopp, and I get that obviously if it's like a business. If you're in charge, if things go well, you're always going to get credit. If things don't, whether it's you or not, people are under you that are failing. It comes under your responsibility. I get it. What is it? What is it about Klopp that you think he's done wrong this season? I said maybe 3 weeks ago, was it 4 weeks ago? This whole 7th season, 8th season syndrome thing he's got going on. Just a hypothesis. I'll put it to you. Oh, Klopp's biggest strength for me, or certainly one of his biggest strengths, is his ability to get people to buy into emotion. I think he's a very emotional, passionate manager. But the other side of that might be being too emotional, being too loyal to players, perhaps when you have to be a bit more cutthroat. Sometimes you have to say, just because he's been good for me for 5 years, I got to let him go. There's new people coming through. I've got to let him go, make cutthroat decisions. I'm not sure if he's capable of that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the players look bored in the system. I mean, yesterday, this is filmed after we just lost 2-1 to Leeds. And there was an occasion yesterday where Fabinho was just pretty much walking back. And we had a corner, we lost the ball in the corner. I don't know if you've seen it. And you see Darwin Núñez sprinting, busting a gut to get back. And Fabinho's just walking. He looks bored. Jurgen Klopp shouted at him. Fabinho put his hands up and shrugged and said, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? He looks bored. He looks physically fatigued. And that is down to Klopp's system. These players aren't getting any younger. We've got the third oldest squad in the league. I don't want to tail off about the players again because that's for later on, but Klopp needs to change the system for me when it's not working. We have no plan B. And yes, you can point the finger at injuries. That's definitely a factor. Of course it is. We haven't necessarily got the players off the bench to come on and impact the games. But Klopp is the manager he is. We know he can change games. He's done it before. But the Barcelona 4-0, he brings off Andy Robertson and he brings on Shaqiri, who ultimately gets the assist for the goal. You know what I mean? He can do that with the players he's got. And I believe he can. And I don't think he's seeing it. But obviously he knows more than me. He knows more than all of us as spectators. I just think he's got to do more in the game. And in terms of what Klopp... Sorry, go on.
Carry on, Joe, sorry.
I'll just say, in terms of what he's done wrong this season, I do look at the Núñez transfer as a massive, massive red light or a red flag. Núñez scored however many goals last year in Liga NOS, ultimately an unproven 21-year-old forward. I always say, if he scored 100 goals in Liga NOS, he still wouldn't be worth £85 million. But we still bought him. Klopp still took that chance on him. And don't get me wrong, I love Núñez. I speak all the time. I'm so excited for him. I think he's a passionate player. And it's so exciting where he could go in the future. I hope he's a world beater. I really do. But at this point now, when you look at all these gaps in the team, the midfield crisis, Keita, Chamberlain, all on the bench, injury-ridden, we needed to replace those holes, fill those holes in. Instead, we went and bought an 85 million unproven striker. And that wasn't FSG not backing Klopp. Klopp had that money. Klopp knew what he had to spend. And he went and bought Núñez, which is a massive risk. And ultimately, has it paid off? We don't know. Because we'll never know, because it was a signing for the future. And he's not plugged in them holes at the time. And I think now it's come back to bite him.
The thing is, George, like you said, £85 million on Núñez. If you're Chelsea's manager or if you're Pep Guardiola, whoever Chelsea's manager is in a year's time, could be anyone.
Yeah.
If these signings go wrong, you just get another £85 million check. And I said to Ben about this, if this signing fails, if Núñez fails, and obviously after a year, it's not to say that you can't judge a player after a year, but say at the end of this year, he stinks the place out and he doesn't look like he's going to, he looks decent, like you said, he looks good. He's not going to get another check to replace that failed signing. Yeah. So to put all your eggs in that basket when you are limited with your resources was like you're massively like playing a game of roulette with that, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right. We just haven't got the budget, and it's down to FSG not throwing money at the club. It's a tiring. Honestly, it's tiring.
On the shape, quickly, you said about the players are bored. That's exactly what that put it better than I was thinking. It about 3 weeks ago, they just looked like, probably longer than that, needed like a new lease of life. And I've been harping on about a back three for ages. Maybe I've just been watching too much Gareth Southgate. I just think, in terms of what the players need, like no matter what midfield combination they put in, they try and flood the midfield with as many people as they want. They still can't seem to get a foothold. To me, the obvious one, from my limited knowledge, just sitting back, is saying just get another centre half on the pitch if you can get one fit, and just take the pressure off of you, like some Trent and Robertson, to do what they haven't been doing very well, which is defend properly. Yeah,
you read my mind. I made a video about this last week. Back three is the way forward for me. It was the way forward, actually, in that season where we lost 7-2 to Villa. We were conceding goals for fun. And yes, that was down to not having a fit centre-back pairing. We went through about 16 centre-back pairings that year, with Henderson filling in and Fabinho filling in. And Fabinho is another talking point, which we'll probably get onto later. But that guy's had a massive downfall. I think Fabinho now is the player I highlighted before who was lazy, physically drained. He's got to drop back for me. I think he can do it. I think he can play in the middle of a back three. I do think that. I think at Monaco, he was a right back. He was a defensively sound player. He came in. We saw him. We used to call him spider legs, didn't we? The way he used to intercept and win all these interceptions. He can drop in. He can be that man in the back of a middle three. in the middle of a back three. Sorry, I promise you. Just wait.
I'm always saying that about Fabinho. Spikes, love calling him that. On a couple of quick points, just because I've got to drive the agenda in. We're talking about Klopp. Do you still back him?
Yes, absolutely.
Because for me, hey, maybe I'm biased and maybe I'm being emotional now. I'm not the most emotional person in the world, to be fair, but I just couldn't. I have to back him the whole way. If we were 18th in the league, I'd still be backing him right now.
Yeah.
Just for from where the starting point was when he took over to where we are now, I have to back him. At what point do you back him till?
A good question. I mean, how long is his contract? Do you know?
Yeah,
I forgot how long
2026 now, isn't it? He's got another 4 years.
26. I think it was partially a mistake signing that long of a contract, to be honest. I think he's got a year. This year is literally make or break. I think Liverpool are definitely a club. We look at someone like Rodgers. I think he was there a bit too long. I think best example is Hodgson. Hodgson was there too long. It did not end well for him. And Liverpool, when it gets to the end, it is nasty. It's usually a nasty ending of managers, and I don't want that for Jurgen Klopp. I think he's got to end at the right time. I think he's got to take the step back himself. I think that's what he will do. I think he will end up resigning more towards, less towards looking at the firing kind of route, because that's just not going to happen. And I don't want it to happen for the guys. Transform the club, and I love him, and everyone does.
Absolutely, and we all should do. There should be a statue of him. I'm sure there will if he leaves on good terms. Formation. You mentioned about the shape. Something I was really keen to talk about, actually. So obviously it's been universally recognised. I think we've been saying it for ages about it's not necessarily move away from 4-3-3 permanently. It was just all a bit rigid, a bit the same. And I'm a big believer in giving people something to think about. And I don't know if you, depends how into football you are, but if you read like Sir Alex Ferguson's book, he used to harp on about every 3 years. Every 3 years, something's got to change. New assistant manager every 3 years. If you did a brilliant job, shake your hand. I'll have you back in 3 years. But we need a new voice. We need a new idea. So Liverpool have gone to a so-called 4-4-2. I'd argue it's not a 4-4-2 in 4-4-2. But I'm not quite. I know that it was exciting against Man City away last season. We did it, obviously, and it scared them in that game. And Liverpool beat Man City at home this year. But I'd argue that's probably more the Anfield factor. Everything went their way. Yeah. I personally think that newfound 4-4-2 causes more problems than it does fix.
It feels like to me we've never run through it in training. I can't work out if Núñez is a striker, if he's a left midfield player. I can't work out where Harvey Elliott fits in the system. Sometimes he's playing in the midfield three, sometimes he's playing far right. There's got to be. It just seems like a free for all up there. I use the phrase, it's like 11 players on a five-a-side pitch. Everyone's everywhere. It's just crazy. I think there's got to be some structure and some discipline, to be honest. He's trying to change something, and fair play, but that isn't working. That isn't working. We're conceding first every single game. It's embarrassing.
When a new manager comes in and they want to change the shape, they always tighten it up. So it always becomes either get an extra centre half in, they play like an extra whole midfield or whatever it may be. It seems to me that Klopp has tried solving the issue of we cannot defend by going even more gung-ho and being even more open than they were 6 weeks ago, which baffles me a little bit because I like the element of surprise. That's a lot of the reason why I want to play. I'd like to see them play a back three, just for the element of surprise and see how people deal with it. Because I think when Chelsea went 3-4-3 under Tuchel, that caused havoc for teams. But going more open and expansive doesn't seem to me like the logical step. It's like a 4-3. It's a 4-3-3 with just someone moving like 5 steps to the right. It doesn't seem like a radical change. It just seems more, like you said.
With 3-4-3, they'd get more players forward more often. I think, obviously, you're talking about the fragility. At the moment, when they were playing 4-3-3, George mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about Fabinho, but Fabinho's been redundant this season. He's been awful. He is just, mate, we're going to come on to that in more detail. So there's no protection in front of the back four as it is. Going to a back three, obviously an extra centre-back, but also allows the fullbacks to get forward more. So I actually think they'd be better going forward as well. I'm not saying it's the permanent solution, but it certainly ties them over during a transition. It's a new idea. It's a new way of playing. It's a new way of beating teams. That's my thoughts anyway.
I mean, like you highlighted before, Klopp is a very stubborn manager. He likes his players, he likes his set-out squad, and he'll play them players until they retire. That's a massive problem. I mentioned before these players are, I believe it's the third oldest squad in the league. I might be wrong there. I think I saw that somewhere.
No, it is there or thereabouts. Yeah. They've all grew old together. I think that's the mistake.
It's unbelievable. You look at since 2018, apart from Diaz, 2019, sorry, what's really happened?
Jota, Diaz,
Champions League game in Barcelona. Yeah.
And George,
Listen,
let's be fair. If Klopp had his way, Wijnaldum would still be playing
yeah,
in midfield, and Mane wouldn't have gone to Bayern Munich. So
absolutely.
those changes you're talking about from 2018 in Kiev to now, the only real change was maybe one of the centre halves, Kanate coming in, and Diaz or Jota. But 9 of the 11, if he had his own way, would still be playing 60 games of football a season.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, Wijnaldum, what a player, by the way. One of the most loyal, resilient, just a proper powerhouse in the midfield. Never stopped,
Reliable.
constant 7 out of 10. And we never replaced him. And Thiago wasn't that replacement. They're different
Well,
profiles.
he was loyal until they wouldn't give him £400,000 a week to play for Liverpool, and then he was on his boat to Paris.
Aye, I know.
But yeah, no, I take your point. And do you know, I think they'd have him back tomorrow, and I think Wijnaldum, the way it's worked out for him at PSG, he'd love to come back.
Yeah.
That's a different thing altogether.
Yeah, you mentioned before about the three at the back or the moving to more of a simpler formation. We haven't got the players to accommodate the high line we're playing. The high line is just ridiculous. We're conceding first every single game and nothing's changing. It's the stubbornness from Jurgen Klopp. Ten Hag came into Man United. He identified all these problems. Maguire was a weakness. The left back at the time was a weakness. So was the right back. What do? You bring in one of the world's best players in Casemiro, who's a born winner. He's going to sit there in front of the back four and sweep up. He's not going to come forward with the ball. He's going to win the ball back and spread it wide to these creative players. That's what Fabinho should be doing. That's what Klopp should be telling him to do. At the moment, we've got Fabinho playing awfully, Thiago doing everything, doing job for three men, and Elliott doing what he wants. We've got to go to either a three at the back, put another centre-back in there, like you said, or go to a structured 4-2-3-1 with two in front and tell him to sit. Fabinho cannot do it on his own. And Thiago is just a brilliant footballer who I love. He's got to have help in there, Thiago. I feel so sorry for him sometimes.
Yeah, I think he's been really good the last year, hasn't he, Thiago? Since
Yeah.
about January last year now.
In terms of someone who's just going to grab the team by the scruff of the neck and drag us over the line, I like Luis Diaz. Luis Diaz is just amazing. The game against Crystal Palace, when we were needing a goal, he just go and smash it in. The game against Napoli, we're like 4-0 down. He goes and runs and scores on his own. He will never stop Luis Diaz, and that's a massive miss. And Thiago's got the exact same mentality. And it looks like Darwin Núñez is that player as well. This guy's work rate is unbelievable. So I can't fault him there.
Do you think Fabinho's legs have gone, George?
I absolutely do.
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks like a 40-year-old footballer now. He wouldn't go out. He wouldn't be misplaced in National League. I go to York City games in National League, and he would fit in.
Yeah, it's interesting. I
Bad.
went up to Anfield last Wednesday, and I was speaking to a few people about this. I feel like Fabinho's legs are gone, but the answer I got was, yeah, but he's never been quick. And I said, yeah, but that's not the point. I'm not talking about players. Henderson's reliant on his legs. Henderson's reliant on energy, getting about the pitch and covering a lot of ground. It was never that with Fabinho. It was about getting to tackles. He had no right to win. And now, all of a sudden, I just feel like George, you talked about Casemiro coming in and making a big impact. I think it's so pivotal when you're playing a 4-3-3 to have that top holding midfielder. And I think for 3-4 years, Liverpool have. But Fabinho's form this season, I do question. Usually I'd say it's form. It's only been 3 months, but he just looks so leggy, mate. He just doesn't look like he can make it anymore.
I know it's definitely a physical factor, but it's also I really do believe it's a factor of being bored. I think he's bored of either the system of just Klopp. There's some interactions this year. He was very vocal in the transfer window about bringing in a midfielder. There's been a lot of interactions this year between Fabinho and Klopp, and he looks bored out his ass. In terms of, he's very underrated. In that Champions League season, we went on to win the cup. He was one of the best ball playing midfielders in the world. He was up there with the Casemiros of this world. In terms of someone who you can literally not press, it was like a Busquets. I mean, Gerrard used to speak about Busquets, how there was no point even closing him down because one pass and he was, one touch and he was around you, or one turn. Fabinho's got a very similar profile to Busquets, but he doesn't anymore. He's just completely lost it, and that's why he's got to move back. He's lost his legs.
Right, George, we've prepared a quick fire round for yourself just to get to know yourself and your views on football a bit better. 6 questions to represent Liverpool's 6 European Cups. You ready?
Yep, go on.
You didn't know we'd done this either, did you?
I didn't know.
You're in the shit a little bit here, but here we go. Who's Liverpool's most important player in your opinion?
If you asked me 6 months ago, I will have said Fabinho. I did say Fabinho. Now I feel like a mug. It is Thiago right now. Do you want me to elaborate?
No. H, you got to come in. Yours.
All right.
Skirtle or Matip?
Matip, 100%. my favourite player in the last 5 years.
See, I think you were going to come in with a rogue, Skirtle used to score. There was that one season this year you almost won the league. He scored a header against every top four side and
Yeah.
4 own goals. Or
Yeah,
something
exactly. He probably
ridiculous in the
scored a
same
header an
season.
hour goal as well. So yeah.
Yeah.
Favorite player of all time?
Luis Suarez, just magic. Did things I've never seen anyone do on a football pitch in the Premier League. Superb. Won games by himself.
If you were to predict now where England will finish in the World Cup, what would you put your money on?
Depending on the draw, I think they can definitely make semis. I think they can win the tournament. I think Brazil look class this year. I think Brazil will win it, but I'll go semi-finals. I'll be optimistic.
Messi or Ronaldo? I hate this question, but I've got to ask.
Messi, and it's not a close one for me. Not a close one.
Finally, if you could make one rule change in football, what would it be?
VAR scrapped. There you go. Short and
Nice
simple.
Wow.
easy one. Nice easy
Yeah.
one. VAR scrapped. Nobody would
Yeah.
disagree with that. Back on the
Ruined
Liverpool
football,
train.
man. Yeah.
Midfield something this season. You've
Yeah.
highlighted Fabinho, you've highlighted Thiago. Henderson? Anyone else in the midfield? You're talking about Harvey Elliott, right wing, centre midfield. What's his best position? Does he float about and do too much? Is that Liverpool's biggest contributing factor to their not failure this season? Well, yeah, failure this season.
I think it is. All these top. I'm not saying we should be a top Premier League side right now, winning the league, of course, with Man City in there. But all these Premier League winning sides had a proper midfield, a proper core. We've got wet wipes in there. We've got Naby Keita. We've got Oxlade-Chamberlain, who cannot stay fit for the life of them. I think Naby Keita's got great potential. Since that Champions League final, though, I mean, God, I think they're still looking for that football he hit over the bar in that Champions League final. Since then, he's gone downhill. I've never really got on with him. I think he's wasted play. I think he should have stayed and if not, go back to Germany because he can never stay fit. He plays 1 in 7 games. And people need to stop protecting Keita. Get him gone. Oxlade-Chamberlain, I'd like him to leave. Milner, another midfielder there. He's about 55 years old and he should go. Jordan Henderson is not getting any younger. His legs are going. Again, he looks pretty bored, to be honest. He really does. His mentality is not what it used to be. Henderson used to be that utility player with a slight caveat, he's a great leader. That was always the end of the sentence. He's a great leader. He'll do well in the dressing room. I don't feel like he is now. He's not playing enough to, have an influence on the team anymore. Van Dijk is the captain more often than not.
Liverpool never looked right when Henderson wasn't on the pitch, did they? That was like the best.
Mm.
If you put the best team on paper, he wasn't in it. But whenever he wasn't in that team, Liverpool just didn't look right. They didn't tick. They didn't look like the team that we've.
I might be wrong. I believe in that 7-2 against Villa, Henderson didn't play. And I believe when we lost to Watford at home a few seasons ago, it ended that run, Henderson didn't play. So, it's one of those things. But is that a coincidence? I don't know.
You mentioned Oxlade-Chamberlain there. How is he still at the club?
Not a clue.
Because, like, for me, same with Origi. I thought they kept hold of Origi a little bit. I know he's a cult hero and all that, but it seemed like, just there was a time when maybe there was a bit of value in keeping it, in selling him in terms of like you would actually get a wage for him. Now with Oxlade-Chamberlain, there's no way anyone will pay anything for him, surely.
Either he is like Zidane in training, or he's just like really funny, and everyone has him there like a comedian, and that's the only reason he's getting kept on payroll because he shouldn't be there, like you just said. He's not good.
Has he got dirt on someone? Do you reckon?
Say it again, sorry.
Has he got dirt on someone? Has he got dirt on Klopp? Is that what it is? Is that why he's keeping him around?
Maybe that's it, but we don't know that. You can say that about a lot of them. A lot of them had.
This season, I feel like we talked about like the defensive thing and the holding midfielder and why Liverpool are perhaps conceding goals, and a lot's made of Van Dijk, and I get it, I do. And you were talking about the high line earlier, Fabinho not being on form, but I feel like from an attacking output perspective, if the fullbacks don't fire, there's no creativity. I don't know how you'd go along with that, but there's so much reliance on the fullbacks, and they're getting exposed defensively, and they're being tested more defensively. How important do you think they are, and getting them right? How important do you think that could be to Liverpool's season? And this leans back to if they went with a 3-4-3, I think it's going to help the fullbacks.
Yeah, it's so pivotal that those fullbacks are firing. But in 35 combined goal contributions in that Champions League winning season, that is, I'll probably use the word revolutionary there. That is unbelievable as a pairing. Gary Neville is looking up to the way Trent plays football, and that's unreal as a legend of the game as a right back. No one wants to grow up and be a Gary Neville. Do you know what I mean? But those two have revolutionized the position in the modern day. as has Cancelo coming in as well, and Reece James, the likes of them. But Trent is, let's be real, let's not beat around the bush. Trent is the elephant in the room. I've not got a comment on Robertson. I think Robertson's actually not been too bad this season, as has Tsimikas. I think they've both been quite good. But Alexander-Arnold, defensively inept, defensively naive. Against Napoli, I think I've got to go back to that one. It's not even missing the tackle. It's not been asked to run back. That's the problem there with me. He looks... I think there's definitely a case for there's no challenge for him. There's no one behind him, of the arse saying, listen, I want your place, because Ramsey's been injured. He's very complacent in his place, and that's definitely been a problem. Another problem has been Fabinho not playing well, means Harvey Elliott's been playing in midfield. We're losing that structure. Harvey Elliott's playing on Trent's side, doesn't help with the defensive structure at all. That is one positive, Henderson being there. At least we keep some sort of structure, and they have some sort of understanding of each other as well on that right hand side. But they look clueless down there this side. So I think it is this year. I think it's down the right side, not the left.
George, does that bug you, what you mentioned about Trent? Because it drives me insane, because I think what he isn't good at is the easiest thing to improve on. Like, you could, if you took Gary Neville now and tried turning him into Trent, if you said, Gary, I want you to stay there in the right back area, we're just going to keep giving you balls, just keep hitting diagonals, keep putting balls into the box for like 15 hours a day for about 10 years, he wouldn't get close to what Trent is. That's what bugs me. I think just a bit of concentration, a bit of nous, and a bit of just focusing on what you're doing, and he would probably double his defensive ability.
That's such a good point. Yeah, it's a great point. Last year, the year before, at least he was putting up numbers in the attack. We kind of thought, oh my God, this guy's brilliant. What a youngster, putting in crosses left, right, and centre for fun. Fine, okay. He's a bit defensively weak, but we'll just make use of it, and he's getting the contribution, so it's fine. But this year, he's had like 0 assists, you know what I mean? And he's defensively awful. You've got to have some sort of, you know what I mean? You've got to make it up at some way. And this year he's just been dreadful in both attributes.
And that's it. He gets exposed. And this is my point earlier with the team not playing as well and him not putting up the assists. People are now concentrating on the other side of his game, of which he's been exposed more often because of the Fabinho points earlier on. George, just conscious of time, but just a quick one from me on Salah. How do you still back him? Do you still think he's going to come good? Because this form has been what people will say since January. I think that's a little bit harsh. I don't think he's been as bad this season. He hasn't been at his best, don't get me wrong, but he hasn't been. It's not quite Aubameyang at Arsenal. It's not quite Ozil at Arsenal. It's not at that level. But are you worried?
I wouldn't say I'm worried. He's definitely not in a sell. He's not even near a sell category for me. I think after AFCON, he was just awful, wasn't he? I mean, he lost his touch completely to the point where he touched the ball, and I was thinking, just pass it because you're going to shoot. It's going to go over. We know what's going to happen. And there's an element of that this season. I don't doubt him. I know what he can do on his day, and I'm fine with Salah. I'm content. I think it's the right word.
He's still got the appetite. I think that's the key thing. I feel like with Aubameyang, Ozil, their heart went a little bit. They didn't want it as much, whereas he's still desperate for it. His movement's amazing. I think he'll still get goals.
Yeah, I've never.
To close off tonight's show. FSG. FSG is the elephant in the room, really. Harris said earlier on about the fact that they're getting away with it for a long time with Jurgen Klopp being such a good manager. Where do you stand on the whole FSG thing?
The net spend is just frankly embarrassing for a club of Liverpool stature, for a club who has such ambitions that Jurgen Klopp has set, and that's the main bit. Jurgen Klopp has set these ambitions. Jurgen Klopp has raised the bar to where it should be, and FSG aren't willing to match that, and that's a problem.
How much of it lays at their door then this season?
Listen, as I said before, Klopp knew what he had to spend. He didn't spend it in the right places for me. So I don't think that's why no one's talking about Klopp. It's very easy to look at FSG this season, but I think they do take a certain role because they could have easily thrown money. Everyone knew, even them who don't watch the team, by the way, even FSG knew we needed a midfielder this year, and they never provided the cash. But I think Klopp's got to take most of the weight this transfer window for me.
George, fascinating chat. Cheers for your time. That was a whistle-stop tour of Liverpool season so far. Apologies, we could only go sort of 2 or 3 minutes per point, but it's one of those things. Thanks for joining me. Cheers for attending tonight.
Thank you, lads. Thanks for having me on.
Cheers, bud.